Welcome back to the Comeback Stories, where we dive into the wildest battles between homeowners and those pesky HOAs. If you love drama, justice, and a good old-fashioned takedown, you're in the right place. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss a single showdown. Today's story. Oh, it's a juicy one. Picture this. I come home from a grueling 4-day work trip, ready to kick back on my own property, only to find a construction crew jackhammering my grass into oblivion. And that's just the beginning. Buckle up, because this is the story of how I took on an overzealous HOA, crippled them financially and legally, and made sure they'd never mess with my land again. Let's get into it. So there I was, pulling into my driveway after 4 days on the road. My suitcase was heavy, my patience was thin, and all I wanted was to crash on my couch with my dog, Max, and maybe binge a new series. But as I stepped out of my car, I froze. The air was thick with the grinding screech of a jackhammer. A small construction crew was tearing up my front yard like it was a public park. Dust clouds swirled where my lush green grass used to be. I blinked hard, thinking maybe I'd pulled into the wrong driveway. But then, under a bush about to be ripped out, I spotted Max's favorite chew toy, a bright red bone, half buried in the dirt. My heart sank. This wasn't a mistake. This was my land, and these strangers were destroying it. Right there, in the middle of my property, was a half-built shed with a smug little sign that read HOA storage members only, my property, not a community lot, not a shared space, my legally owned land. I could feel my blood pressure spiking, but I kept my cool. I walked over to the foreman, who was barking orders like he owned the place, and asked calmly, "Excuse me, why are you digging up my yard?" His response? "Take it up with the HOA. No apology, no explanation, just a shrug and a nod toward the neighborhood's self-appointed overlords." That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was war. I didn't waste a second. I marched straight to the HOA office, a tiny building at the edge of the neighborhood that always smelled faintly of cheap air freshener and regret. Inside, I was greeted by none other than Karen, the HOA president herself. Picture a woman with a boss babe mug, sipping something that was probably more attitude than coffee. She barely looked up from her desk as I stood there, fuming. "We're expanding our storage for neighborhood tools," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "The board approved it." I took a deep breath and said, "That's great, Karen, except you approved it on my land." Her response? A smirk. "It's common area," she said. "You're confused." Oh, Karen, I wasn't confused. I was crystal clear, and I had the paperwork to prove it. That night, I went home and turned my dining room into a war room. I pulled up every record I had, the plat map, the deed, the property survey from when I bought the house 3 years ago. Every single one confirmed what I already knew: this land was mine, down to the last blade of grass. I highlighted the boundary lines in bright yellow, scanned everything, and fired off an email to the HOA board with a subject line that read, "Immediate cease and desist trespassing on private property." I attached every document, every map, every shred of evidence, and gave them a clear warning: stop the construction now, or face the consequences. I hit send and waited, and waited. 2 days later, no response. But you know what I did get? A concrete slab poured where my lawn used to be. My bushes bulldozed into a sad pile of twigs, and the shed's walls halfway up. They didn't just ignore me, they doubled down. That was the last straw. I wasn't about to let this slide. I grabbed a sheet of plywood from my garage, some red paint, and a brush, and got to work. By noon, I had a 3-foot wide sign that screamed, "Private property, you are trespassing." I hammered a wooden post into the ground, mounted the sign right in front of their precious shed, and made sure it was impossible to miss. Then I grabbed my phone and took a dozen photos, timestamped, geotagged, backed up to the cloud, and saved on a hard drive for good measure. I wasn't playing games anymore. I called my real estate attorney, Sarah, who's been my go-to for property disputes since I bought the house. She took one look at my evidence and said, "Oh, they've messed with the wrong homeowner." Sarah drafted a cease and desist letter that was a work of art, professional, brutal, and airtight. It called out the HOA for trespassing, building without permits, and violating my property rights. It demanded they stop construction, remove the shed, and restore my land within 10 business days. We sent it via certified mail, return receipt requested, and guess what? They signed for it. And then, crickets. Instead of backing down, the HOA decided to escalate. The next day, I found a citation in my mailbox for non-compliant signage. Yep, they were fining me for my big red private property sign. A second citation followed, accusing me of unauthorized landscaping changes. Apparently, the giant hole they dug in my lawn counted as landscaping, and I wasn't allowed to alter it. The audacity was unreal. I wasn't about to let these petty fines intimidate me. I RSVP'd for the next HOA board meeting, printed out copies of my plat map, deed, survey, and timestamped photos, and walked in ready to set the record straight. The room was tense the second I stepped inside. Karen was there, of course, sitting at the head of the table with that same infuriating smirk. "Oh, it's Mr. Survey Lines," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, ready to cause a scene. I didn't take the bait. I handed out my documents to every board member and laid it out. "Your shed is 10 feet onto my private property. I've notified you, given you every chance to fix this, and you're choosing not to." The room went quiet. Karen rolled her eyes and said, "It's for the benefit of the community. You should be proud your yard's being put to good use." That's when the room split. One neighbor actually clapped. Another whispered, "That's not how this works." Even the treasurer started shifting uncomfortably in his seat. That meeting was just the beginning. Sarah filed for a temporary injunction in civil court, adding the HOA's retaliatory fines to the list of grievances. We weren't just fighting trespassing anymore, this was harassment, plain and simple. To cover all our bases, I hired a licensed surveyor to come back out and remark the boundary lines with bright orange stakes and ribbon. Every inch of my property was now a neon beacon of truth. But the real game changer came when a county building inspector showed up, tipped off by a neighbor who'd had enough of the HOA's antics. He took one look at the shed, asked for the permits, and when I told him there weren't any, he started scribbling notes like his pen was on fire. "This is a huge violation," he said, snapping photos of the construction. "They're going to have to explain themselves." I offered him coffee, and he just smiled. "Keep your documentation ready," he said. "This is going to get interesting." Court day arrived, and let me tell you, it was quieter than a library, but my case file was louder than a rock concert. We walked in with everything: certified letters, time-stamped photos, the inspector's violation notice, 2 boundary surveys with GPS coordinates, and my deed and plat map. Sarah was calm as ever, but you could tell she was ready to pounce. Karen, on the other hand, strutted in wearing sunglasses indoors, trailing a lawyer who looked like he was questioning every life choice that led him to this moment. The judge didn't waste time. "Let's establish the facts," he said. "Who owns the land?" We submitted the deed, the plat map, and the surveyor's testimony. The surveyor took the stand, pointed out the orange stakes still visible on my lawn, and said, "The structure crosses the line by 10 feet. There's no easement, no shared rights, no ambiguity." The HOA's lawyer tried to argue it was a common area misclassification, and that the board assumed the land was theirs due to historic use. The judge wasn't having it. "Did you pull a permit?" he asked. "No, Your Honor," the lawyer admitted. "Did you verify ownership before construction?" Silence. I didn't ask what they believed, the judge snapped. I asked what they verified. More silence. Then came the gavel. Bam. "The HOA is found to have trespassed on private property." The judge ruled. The lack of permits, retaliatory actions, and continued occupation after formal notice shows willful negligence. Karen's mouth dropped open like she'd just seen a ghost. The judge continued, "Effective immediately. The HOA is ordered to demolish the structure, restore the property to its previous condition, and compensate the plaintiff for damages, court costs, and legal fees." The final bill, $94,000. Damages, legal fees, restoration costs, and a little extra for wasting my time. The shit came down in silence, no ribbon cutting, no HOA newsletter announcement, just a quiet crew working at dawn, trying not to be seen. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand, while Karen stood across the street, pretending not to look. My lawn was restored, new sod, new flower beds, everything exactly how I wanted it. And Karen, she resigned the following week. Her email was a passive-aggressive masterpiece. "Due to increased personal obligations, I will no longer be able to serve this wonderful community." Yeah, right? The new board president, a retired judge who'd clapped when the demolition started. The fake fines they'd slapped me with, gone. My non-compliant signage, erased from the record. The aftermath was sweet. Neighbors started reaching out, sharing their own HOA horror stories, repainted mailboxes, trimmed trees, rerouted sprinklers, all without permission. I wasn't the first they'd bullied, just the first to fight back and win. One neighbor brought me a pie. Another asked for help challenging suspicious dues increases. I installed motion-activated cameras around my lot, added new survey stakes, and even had that plaque made to remind everyone, this land is mine. Karen still lives here, but she keeps her head down now, sunglasses always on, walking her dog like she's on a covert mission. No more power trips, no more smut lectures, just the quiet reality that she got legally and publicly wrecked at SO. What's the lesson here? Never underestimate the power of a property line, a good lawyer, and a whole lot of backbone. The HOA thought they could steamroll me, but they forgot one thing. Homeowners have rights, and I wasn't afraid to use them. This is the comeback stories, and I want to hear from you. Have you had an HOA nightmare? Did Karen get what she deserved? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more stories like this, hit that like button and subscribe for more HOA showdowns. Until next time, keep your boundaries clear and your deeds closer. Peace out.